Hi everyone, welcome back to the Spark and Fudge podcast. I'm Subrata. Today's episode dives into question that's shaping our future. Can we harness the immense potential of artificial intelligence for good without unleashing unintended consequences like bias or privacy violations? Syed Ahmed, a leading voice in responsible AI, joins me to navigate this crucial challenge. Syed is the head and founding member of the Responsible AI Office at Infosys. He is a thought leader actively shaping AI's future with organizations like National Institute of Standards and Technology and International Organization for Standardization. His expertise include patent for creating platform agnostic digital workers is invaluable. Our conversation focuses on building and deploying AI ethically and responsibly. We will explore cutting edge advancements in AI and its potential to transform industries. We will also delve into strategies for mitigating risks like bias and privacy concerns. Throughout, you will hear about Syed's fascinating work in the broader AI community, gaining insights into his vision for a future where humans and machines work together for a brighter tomorrow. So get ready for a thought provoking conversation that will challenge your perception and ignite your curiosity. We will navigate the complex landscape of AI and responsible AI practices, unlocking its vast potential while keeping a close eye on the ethical implications. And now, following is the conversation with Syed Ahmed. So let's get started. Syed, welcome to the Spark and Forge podcast. This episode is especially for the tech leaders, CEO, entrepreneurs, and frankly, anyone who's interested in the future of AI. And I am so thrilled to have you today to explore this interesting and fascinating topic of AI ethics. And I'm sure your insights on responsible AI development would be extremely valuable to our listeners. And I am so looking forward to learning from you. So, welcome once again.
Thank you, Subrata. Thank you so much for having me on this wonderful forum. Really honored to be here and talking on a topic which is so close to my heart. And I see that this topic is gaining prominence across, and I'm very happy to see that. And I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Fantastic. So, yeah, in the first segment, we will spend a little bit of a time explore where the AI is headed today and what are the exciting advancements are on the horizon. And then we will delve into the core topic, which is AI ethics, including governance and regulations. And finally, we will wrap up by discussing how the startups and the tech companies can get started with incorporating some of these strategies that will come up in these discussions in their own AI practices. So let me start by asking you this. We see AI everywhere. So is booming. What's driving this rapid growth that we are seeing today?
So, excellent question. I think to begin with, AI is everywhere. Totally agree, right? It is penetrated all forms of our work and personal and professional lives. No doubt about it. Starting from using your phone to unlock it using biometric features, or navigating to your work using Google Maps or whatever maps that you use. Everything, even before we know AI is there, even for to ensure cooling of your room is at the right temperature, the air condition and your washing machine, everything is actually AI. And you look at it from a consumer point of view, you have started adopting AI everywhere, and it is there. But when it comes to enterprise adoption, it is still lacking. People are experimenting a lot, but there is still a long way for enterprises to catch up. This is my feel. I'll talk about it a little bit more as we progress during the session. But what is, to answer your question, what is propelling this? There is so much of exciting new development that have happened that has become mainstream right now. So everyone has started talking about AI, right? So it's not that we were not doing AI before. We were always doing AI, say, for more than 15, 20 years. We have been working on AI algorithms, classification, regression, very basic, small stuff. But because the compute has become so powerful and so commoditized now, that we are able to afford a large scale compute, and we started seeing a good improvement in AI algorithms and accuracies around 5 to 6 years ago, right? But all this became more prevalent when we started working on, say, GPUs. Nvidia had this chip which was for graphics rendering, right? So that it can parallelly render multiple different pixels with colors and things like that, which actually was quite helpful in AI processing and AI compute, and that made our compute so easy and so parallel that AI algorithms started advancing and it became big. And there's so much of advancement is happening across the compute landscape, whether it is Nvidia. Nvidia is right now the market leader with announcing the Blackwell platform. Earlier, they had this H100 and A100 machines and all that. That actually powered the compute. And when you look at the models and all that, they have evolved a long way, right? Initially, we used to have some classification AI models and all that. Now it is, we have large language models. Even in large language models, we have come into the era of multi models, wherein you can have text, images, video, code, everything together. So quite interesting space, and I'm sure this is going to grow much
Sometime
further.
back, I was having a conversation with someone, and he said the same thing, that the AI is everywhere. He says the if statement is an AI and else statement is a reinforcement learning, because you learn from the if statement what you and you apply them into in the else. So
Absolutely.
it is proliferating everywhere. You briefly touched about the AI models. How can understanding of these different models help leaders and entrepreneurs to drive innovation and stay competitive? Especially if you could touch upon some of the bespoke models, for example, in the finance sector or healthcare.
So yeah, I'm more than happy to do that. Let's break this into two parts, right? Wherein first, maybe I'll touch upon what these AI models are and the evolution of these models, and then we'll get into the specialized model, or what we call as small language models and all that. So let's take a step back on what this the evolution of AI. AI earlier, like I said, was used primarily for, say, classification, regression, very simple task, and we of course had some reinforcement learning and all that. But when it comes to language, see, I'm going to talk about in the context of language model and generative AI, because everyone is going to talk about that now. So I'll take that as an example. So let's look at the evolution. When actually you wanted to build a computer program to, say, translate between English and French, what earlier we used to do is we used to have a dictionary of English and dictionary of French, and find a word. When you're translating, go and find a word of English, exact meaning of that word in French, and translate it. This is the first and raw evolution that happened, wherein you used to search and replace, right? That is how it was happening. And then came along the machine learning model that was able to do it much faster and better, but still it was around this. It was failing miserably because it was not able to understand. Language has this inherent ability wherein it is not just the words, the way it is spoken, it is also in the context in which they were spoken, right?
Yeah.
This kind of translation is in the language. Typically you need to have the context, right? So the words changes depending on the context in which they are spoken and how they are spoken. This is very important, right? And that was lacking in earlier machine learning models that were coming in. So, and then came along a series of architecture called transformers, and this was powered by a paper which said, attention is all you need, wherein it became clear from the context perspective. You need to be able to understand the context for the weightage of each of the word, and then make decision based on that. So that led to a revolutionization of some a particular architecture called transformers that actually powered the what we call as large language models. Now Machine learning models are able to understand even the context in which a word is spoken and is able to understand that sentence full. Now, this is a very important evolution. Now, since it is able to understand what we are speaking and what we are feeding to it, people started feeding a lot of information that is available out there. All the information that is there in the internet, all the available information that is there in our documents and all that, and it started learning and understanding. So the inherent ability of these models to learn and understand from this data, from the context driven stuff, it started going into internet, Wikipedia and all that, and understood everything. And now it is able to generate information back. Say for example, if you ask for a question, it won't come and copy and replace it to you. It will understand your question. It will go through its memory saying that, okay, I have learned all this, but it will regenerate. That is why it is called generative AI. It generates a response, it synthesizes a response based on its understanding. That's why it became quite popular. And the moment ChatGPT came in and announced and was able to give a very simple chat interface wherein you can type a question and you get a response, that's all they did, right? People started seeing the power of it, saying that, okay, now it is intelligent enough. And that is where this models got developed. And we started adding a little bit more complexities on these models as we got along. It was initially only English, then we had multilingual, then we added images, then we added videos with Sora and a lot of other models that are there. Then we added audios, then we added code. So it became it kind of evolved, and this is how the models are. But these are what we call as basically the foundation model or the pre-trained model or general purpose models that are there, right? Now if you want to start using them for now coming to your second part of the question, if you want to start using them for your enterprises, say finance or manufacturing or retail, it may be good because it is trained on, it is like a person who is already educated from a university but not specialized anywhere. So it will have a lot of pre-trained knowledge, it will have the information that is required, but may not have specific skills to perform for the particular sector or a domain. For that, we need to be able to take a pre-trained model and give them the context of specific industry or specific work that we want it to do. Now, for us to be able to do that, there are multiple different architectures that have come up. So, for example, one very popular architecture is RAG, wherein people can take a foundation model or a pre-trained model and use their context, their vector database, to bring in, say, finance context or their enterprise context, and start leveraging the power of the large language model in answering questions specific to their context. Another very popular architecture that is evolved and most of the enterprises are using is what we call as small language model, where we are fine tuning it to our specific data or domain specific data, like Google Lapland, which is for only medical focused models and all that. So a lot of models are evolving now on sector specific, which can be used and specifically trained, say, on legal nuances, on medical nuances, on finance and things like that. So these are some of the things that are evolving and coming.
So, if I'm a tech leader who's exploring to utilize AI for my business to stay ahead, what should be my considerations?
So there are two, three things that we need to look into when it comes to embracing this at enterprise scale, right? One, of course, is ensuring we embrace it in a right way with the responsible and ethical use of AI. I'll come to that in the end more. But even before that, we need to talk about how do we work on human plus AI? How do we ensure that when we implement this, we need to be able to implement this at scale. If you're going to implement this at scale for your enterprise, for your customers, you need to ensure that you need to be able to work seamlessly with the humans, right? What are the rules of the road for this? How do you do that? What will humans, because it is very important for us to solve this issue, because we should not be competing with no, AI. AI is good at doing certain tasks, we should let AI do that. Humans are good at doing certain tasks, we should continue to do that, right? Which means we need to amplify the potential of both by bringing in a concept called human plus AI, and that's what we work very closely on. That actually will amplify complete processes that we are working on. So we need to keep a focus on that. We need to keep a focus on not just experimenting, but having thought of how do you scale. So a platform centric approach would sound ideal, wherein we can actually have enterprise-wide platforms, AI platforms built so that you leverage the scale, right? So that it becomes the AI use cases become viable, so that you can use the same data pipeline. You will be able to use the same rendering frameworks, same AI models across multiple different use cases. So you need to ensure you think through enterprise landscape. You need to think through how your ops will come in. So if you're using LLM, you need to bring in so LLM ops, agentic frameworks, and things like that. You need to think through in the lens of how do you bring it at scale from a platform centric view. Another thing is, unfortunately, because of the gold rush that is happening in AI, everything and anything people are saying, okay, there's a AI use case. So we need to have a structured kind of discovery approach wherein we need to identify use cases that actually make sense. Not everything should be done via AI, right? So we need to have a strong structured discovery and prioritization framework that allows us to say, okay, yes, these are the use cases that make sense and will generate value, and we should actually concentrate on those use cases more. And of course, talent transformation, change management, these are few of the things that needs to be concentrated on when enterprises and business leaders are thinking of adopting this beyond just experimenting on POC scales. Okay, see, it was surprising to me when I first saw this data, right? We initially thought the financial sector is quite regulatory driven and they will not be adopting AI, but to our surprise, it is actually FS sector which is leading the way, right? And FS is investing very heavily across geographies. Financial services, yeah. BFSI is actually leading the entire pack in adoption of AI, and common use cases are pretty common across the sectors in FS as well as non-FS. Primarily, the low-hanging fruit for everyone to start using Gen AI are in the areas of customer experience, customer and advisory services. People are using semantic search and summarization quite heavily nowadays. They're using it for marketing use cases as well, so that personalized content can be targeted and developed. Language translation, and these are some of the key use cases that are coming in across multiple sectors, including financial services. But BFSI is leading the pack, followed by I would say utilities, energy, manufacturing, all the sectors. Healthcare, there are a few things, but they're still not in the top five, is what I would say, at least from where I stand and from where I am seeing. See, that is a trend that even we are seeing. So, if you're going to use generative AI and AI and autonomic agent kind of framework for only productivity improvement, it's not doing justice, right? It may bring in say 10% or whatever productivity improvement that is there. If you're going to use the power of technology to you need to reimagine the existing ways of things that we are doing, right? If you continue to optimize, there is only so much you can actually achieve. Using Gen AI and AI, we are able to reimagine a totally different ways of working, on which how humans and machines will work, right? So typically today, if you look at it, the way we have been able to get into today's stages, it's all driven by the form driven kind of man machine interaction, right? So I'll give you an example. Typically, when you used to walk into a bank, say 50 to 100 years ago, they were giving you a form. You had to fill that up and had to submit it. That used to get filed, and then that got evolved into, say, a typewritten form that got evolved into what we see on a web page. For that, you need to type and things like that. We had a typewriter and everything, right? So it was very much driven by a physical document that got translated into a digital document kind of things, and all our processes are formed around these, the entire man machine interaction. Now this is getting disrupted completely and fully. Now we don't need to interact with the machines in a very traditional sense using a monitor or a keyboard or a mouse or anything. Our interaction can be very intuitive. It can be just gestures, it can be voice, it can be naturally placed languages and things like that. And also the entire programming language evolution that happened was for, as a translator only. For a human to be able to tell a machine what to do, we needed a translator in between. That is where all these programming languages came in to convey that message, right? So all this is getting disrupted, and the way we work now will be totally different. What this is going to lead to, it's a little bit of futuristic view,
Hmm.
in what I call it as autonomous processes, right? When I say we need to have rules of the road when humans and machines should work together, I believe um, humans should have the great ability of ensuring that they define the rules, they define the boundaries, they define how work needs to be done and where they need to come in and make decisions. All this stuff continue to do. I mean, all the analytical stuff, all the data churning and things like that, AI can do. By bringing these things in, say, for example, you can have autonomous processes. Say, for example, there is a supply chain process that is there. Now you don't need too much of a human involvement in that. That entire process can be made autonomous, where AI agents can autonomously make decisions and say, okay, this is the efficient way, the most efficient way to deliver a product from point A to point B, right? So, and humans can come in and define the rules, boundaries, and where they need to be able to make decisions. Otherwise, most of the things can become autonomous. So, rather than improving the efficiency of current supply chain process by 10% or 20%, you are looking at total transformation of process using AI anatomy and human defining the rules. And this concept is what is powering the entire transition and transformation, I would say.
So that process redefinition is what you talked about earlier in terms of reimagining different ways of doing things. Earlier way we used to do it in one way, but now let us go back, ask question, is this the better way to do, or is there another way to do it? And second thing you talked about is the world in the future is not just human, not just AI or it is the AI and human together. We hear about this humanoid guys coming up. They will participate along with us. They will do certain things well. They will not do certain things well. But like you said, it is important for humans to define the rule of the game. The question is, what are we doing to really get prepared for that future?
See, this is a quite an interesting question for me considering my background, right? So I'm so bullish on technology, but still my role is to ensure adoption of AI in a responsible and ethical manner, right? While I'm talking about all these things, I'm bullish about technology. I believe strongly that it needs to be done in a manner. AI is here to stay. There is no denying, there is no stopping AI, or there is no closing our eyes saying that AI will roll over. It is not going to. It is going to be here, and it is here for staying. Now, question is, how do we embrace it? It's a choice that we have, and we need to be able to embrace it in a responsible and ethical manner, and that actually impact us as individual, as business, as society. So we need to ensure that we operate under certain rules and guidance, which is very important. I strongly believe that it has to be even in absence of governance today, you don't have too much of guidance, or at least regulations across geographies on how to use AI. What I would recommend is, even in absence of regulations in certain geographies, it becomes our individual social responsibility to do the right thing. It becomes our corporate social responsibility to do the right thing and embrace AI in a responsible and ethical manner. While the regulations are emerging, they have emerged in few countries in quite mature state, China, Europe, and other places. And many other places, they're still debating and working on it. But these rules of the road will become very clear from a regulatory perspective. My challenge is, even in the absence of regulation, it's not that we get a free run. We need to do what is the right thing.
Progress that we see on the AI, especially. and every single day it is getting smarter and smarter. The growth is not linear anymore, it is exponential. So do you think this is getting us closer socially, or is it moving us further apart?
See,
Do
that's
we
one of the most difficult question I struggle to answer with, right? So because it works either way, and it depends on how you look at it. For example, AI will enable us. It's shrinking the world, right? We are able to connect and communicate efficiently with your loved ones using technology, and it is bringing them closer in that sense. But having
Hmm.
said that, your reliance on AI to actually do the conversation, which is also emotional in nature in some cases, right? Because it is able to understand the context and all that. There are some experimentations done for in assisted living spaces in a couple of places wherein they're using a humanoid to have conversations with elderly patients who are lonely, right? And it's working for them because there is no one else, there is no other choice. In absence of choice, maybe this is a good option. But I think I believe even now, saying that AI has not reached a state to bring in the required real soulful emotional connect, and for that, that is a core kind of capability of humans, and it will still remain. So it'll still be, if AI is doing a emotional connect, it will still remain artificial in my way. So the natural, the emotions are still the core capability and forte of human beings, I would say.
Fantastic. You talked about generative AI, and it is obviously creating a lot of buzz. Question is, how can we really ensure that it is fair and unbiased? A lot of decisions people might be making based upon what is thrown out there, and they might be using that information because they feel that it is coming out from the system. Your view on this?
See, there is no shortcut. We need to be able to educate users who are going to use AI on how and why they should be using and under what conditions, right? They should be made aware of their limitations. You actually touched upon a nerve point here, right? Saying that if a machine is throwing out a data and say, okay, it looks like it is well rehearsed, the acceptance ability for humans to accept something coming in from a system is much higher. So while naturally humans, we may also be biased and our current data may be biased, but if that bias gets into a system, it gets amplified, right, multifold. So we need to prevent this. There is no way we can actually accept the generative AI being unfair, biased, and that is why you see a lot of hue and cry about the reason for unbiased models and things like that. The way you can prevent it, in my opinion, and I think this will continue on to the next segment as well, is very important, right? We need to protect ourselves from three different angles, right? We need to ensure that when we, as an enterprise, as a CEO, as a tech leader, when we are working on it, we need to cover ourselves first legally. Ensure that your legal clauses, your legal contracts, your SOWs, your terms and conditions that you sign are in line with the AI clauses and what needs to be done. Cover yourself legally. So that is the first layer of protection you will get. The second layer of protection that you need to work on will be the process point of view. You just can't get a notebook and start writing AI models and start using them. That's a big no-no. You need to have a AI management system in place that actually follows a proper process, right? And because you spoke about data, I will tell you how the evolution of even guardrails are coming. And the third one is, on the ground, when you are using AI models, you need to be protected and you need to be able to codify compliance. You need to be able to codify your guardrails and use them. When you are sending in a prompt, your prompt needs to get checked whether you're leaking any information, whether your IP is being compromised, if your privacy is being compromised, if you're violating any org rules. All this needs to be codified automatically. If you want to do this manually, the AI use case will not be viable at all. So you need to codify these things, and you need to be able to protect, and you need to be able to check for biases, fairness, and things that you spoke about, right? And coming back to data, the technology itself is evolving so fast, saying that earlier our guardrails were simple, right? We used to say for any machine learning or AI programs, You start with data, ensure that your data preparation is done correctly, your data has light lineage. But with pre-trained models, all that is gone away, right? It is already pre-trained by some data that you don't have access to. Still, you need protection. In that case, your guardrails will have to evolve, and during the inferencing time, during the prompting time, you need to be able to build in required guardrails. You need to be able to codify them. So as technology evolves, you need to also keep evolving your protection around the fairness, biases, privacy, and all the other stuff that is out there.
So let's go through the bias and fairness and others in a little bit more detail. But before we move to that segment on the future of AI or any other developments or any advancements that is happening, is there anything that you would like to point out there for our viewers or listeners?
No, this has been fantastic discussion so far. Let's jump right into it.
All right. So let's talk about the bias and fairness as a first dimension on that ethics. My first question comes is, how can we really ensure AI systems are developed and deployed in a fair and unbiased manner, especially when dealing with sensitive data? What's your view on this?
See, the multiple ways in which we can actually look into this. Again, we'll have to split this into two parts, right? When you're looking at fairness and bias part of it, typically you need to look at fairness and bias the way it was being handled or will be handled in traditional deep learning and machine learning algorithms, where you have a totally different kind of approaches there. When you talk about fairnesses and bias in a traditional deep learning, you talk with go on with data. You have certain algorithms that actually help you with analyzing the group fairness. You have things like statistical parity differences, disparate impact, looking at who are the impacted parties, ethnicity, and things like that, right? You can actually look at whether for your structured data, right? When you're uploading a structured data, which column will be actually influencing which other column, and then based on that you can calculate certain sensitivities and say, okay, this column is having some kind of negative impact on certain type of groups, like say gender or ethnicity or things like that. So these algorithms are available when you talk about traditional deep learning kind of models that are there. But when it comes to generative AI, the ballgame changes altogether. You need to be able to do it on the fly on a prompt that is given to you, and the response that is got back. So there are certain techniques available out there, like we'll be able to use some template based few shot learning methods. We have something called the leaderboards, wherein we can actually look at some benchmarking by say trust LLM and things like that, wherein we know that okay, inherently when the model is come in, when you're evaluating and when you're selecting a particular model, are you selecting a model that has been benchmarked against trust and fairness? So rather than doing it like in a traditional deep learning, later on when you are implementing the model, during the model selection itself in the pre-trained models, you will have some benchmarks that you can actually look into. And few other techniques are there. There are very simple techniques as well when you actually get into say um, the area of large language models. Simple things like giving it the right context as part of the query, saying that when you're giving me the response, you give me a response that is unbiased, that is fair, and doesn't, or at least point out to me if there are any issues, or some of the simple techniques that can be used. And we can actually start teaching it, right? So fine tuning it to ensure that it doesn't have biases in the large language models. So these are some of the things that
Is there a way by which the model can be really analyzed and you can really identify those biases and eliminate some of those biases which creeps in? Or is there a way that you really get the humans to intervene?
it is all the above. All right, we will have to all of them. Human in the loop need to come in. But if I can break this down on how I would approach is quite simple, right? One is you need to be able to have guardrails at a prompt level, at a response level, which you are able to, which is the technical guardrail is able to tell you that there is a bias issue, there is a fairness issue, these are the impacted parties, these are the sensitive groups that are there. We should be able to tell that and point out so that a human in the loop can come in and take a decision later on. This is point number one that I had mentioned. Other one is the benchmarking. Again, let's go a little bit deeper into how the benchmarking typically works, right? So benchmarking of the models, you need to be able to select the right model for your work as well, right? So typically the way the benchmarking works is it'll take like say 10, 15 different models and will ask the same question again. There will be series of questions, say 300 to 500 questions that may be there. It will ask every model the same question, and depending the answers it keeps giving again and again for those models, it will analyze that, and it will give certain weightage and benchmark, saying that a particular model, how it is performing when it comes to the fairness parameters, how it is performing with when it comes to the bias parameters and all that stuff. So there are many such benchmarks that are out there that we can actually refer to. The many of them are even open source, where we know what are the types of questions that are being asked. I would say we need to also reference these industry benchmarks that are coming up around bias.
Is this, are there models which are country specific, region specific? Are we really spending time and effort to fine tune some of these models to eliminate these biases? Is there ready made, fine tuned benchmark models that I can really take it and use?
See, there is no one answer for this, right? So I would again go back and tell you this. There are tools available to identify any stereotype recognitions, any issue with a particular sensitive group, or if someone is unfairly favored or not favored and all that. But what you don't have is a model to make a decision saying that okay, for a HR process or for a other process, do you have a specific fairness and trust benchmarking that are out there. At the end of the day, I would say the decision will always will have to remain with the end user who's going to implement it, right? So they will have to think through, first of all, if someone is thinking of deploying and implementing a AI and a Gen AI use case in say HR kind of scenario, they need to think hard. If are they okay for an algorithm to make a decision or a career decision of an human or an employee that is coming in. So I actually have to go back, so it doesn't work in one part of it, right? You need to go back in the process that I was mentioning, the process guardrails. In your process guardrail, right from the use case development, you need to understand whether this is the right use case. And in some of the geographies like EU, it is classified as a high risk use case. Say for example, if you are going to use AI in recruitment and that is making a career impacting decision, then there are certain obligations that you need to follow. So what when I'm saying this is, it is not just the algorithm or the model selection, it is also the person who is coming up with this use case, a person who is developing this, person who is testing it, and finally the rollout part of it. The entire process needs to be followed with what we call as AI management system, and in accordance with the law of the land in the particular geography. And while doing this, we have a lot of tools that are available to tell us, say, a particular model inherently is biased model or not. How does it deal with say stereotyping? How does it deal with other sensitive groups and all that? So those helps are available based on the benchmarking tools. But ultimately, for a use case, it is up to us to be able to do that. And even at a use case level, there are options available for us to codify some of the guardrails when it comes to fairness. So we should be able to do all of these things. Just doing one guardrail check saying that after this I'll be bias free and I'll be guilt free is not going to work. We'll have to in this area.
So what you're saying, my understanding is, it's a multi-pronged approach. It is not just taking a model and start using it, and it will address all my bias and
There is
fairness
no
is not going
certificate
to
there,
happen.
right, saying that the value chain you need to be cautious.
But probably we will also see, I'm not sure, maybe for HR there are SHRM or some HR consortiums who probably are defining some of those processes, may do something and are doing something, we are not aware of it,
I'm not
but
aware
it
of
may
it.
happen at that level. But at the same time, you touched upon the use case. Now, just for the listeners understanding, when we are implementing AI in our companies, it is important for us to identify what are the various processes or the test, use cases that I'm going to be applying AI for. So I need to be able to write them. I need to be able to review them. I need to make sure that by doing this and implementing through AI is going to deliver value to me. So use case time, you are saying, is a good checkpoint to make sure that by doing this use case, am I creeping in some of those biases and fairness itself, or should we do something about it? Is that correct? Is that fair? What
Yes,
you said?
it is correct. What we call it as responsible by design, which means even before you implement, you think, right? At a use case stage, there is no point in doing a POC and implementing it and then realizing, no, I got it wrong here and this may not work out. At a use case stage itself will be a good checkpoint to see, what you are doing is right or in the right direction or in compliance or not. And it doesn't stop there. It has to go through the entire, so after use case, during your design, whether to look at your architecture is right and architecture is leading to any bias or fairness issue, and then your data, your prompts, your usage. You need to be able to do it at every single stage. That is very important. It just
Fantastic.
starts at use case definition level, but it doesn't end there.
Got it.
You can move on.
So the transparency, of course, is the key, because if I'm using a AI model, many times I get a response and I'm not sure, whether this is coming out. So, and also explainability. So, is that a concern? What are the current innovation development in this area to really address this particular concern?
See, this is one of the most important areas when it comes to adoption of AI, because inherently, when a machine is making a decision for us, we need to be able to know why. Is it a black box, or we need to be able to understand why it is a making decision? Because our reliance on technology and AI has become so high that we actually demand these kind of explainability and transparency features. So fortunately, I think we have enough ground covered here, where even if it is a black box large language model for which we don't have access and all that, we'll
Hmm.
still be able to fairly satisfy ourselves on why a particular decision is made by an algorithm or a particular data has been given. If you're talking about traditional deep learning or machine learning algorithms, you have multiple different algorithms like Lime and Shab, which are still pretty powerful, and it actually changes from each data type to data type, right? So if you're going to use text data, the kind of explainability for that will be totally different, and this works for even fairness, bias, or any of the attributes that you look into. If you look at image explainability is totally different. If you look at video explainability is totally different. For code explainability, so depending on the data types that you use, you need to be able to use the right explainability techniques that are available out there. Now, since
Can
we are
you
talking,
explain to our audience and viewers what is explainability and why is it important, and how is it addressed, just for people who are not so familiar?
so explainability in simple terms is a machine or a AI algorithm to be able to tell why it made a certain decisions, what are the parameters that actually impacted it to say what it is saying and what decision it is made, and be transparent about it. At the end of the day, it can give the entire explanation around that, and then finally human can make a decision. So this is in a traditional sense of explainability. I'll extend that when it comes to the large language models. Explainability is also to be able to explain the final response that is given by a large language model in terms of factual accuracy. Because with all the hallucinations and things like that
Yes.
are out there, we need to be able to confirm that the model that is giving the responses back is factually accurate, right? For that, there are lots of techniques to identify factual accuracies. There are lots of verification techniques, techniques like graph of thought, chain of thought, thread of thoughts, and all that, that can actually ensure factual kind of accuracies that are there. So factually correct. And then there is something called as faithfulness. For the prompt that you have been able to give, the prompt that you have given, is the response faithful to that prompt, right? Is it giving something else, or Is it being faithful to the prompt? Is it consistent? Is it coherent? Is it giving response back in a fluent manner? So these are some of the parameters that we actually track when it comes to explainability of large language models. So in nutshell, going back, it should be able to explain and give you confidence in that response is usable or not. If it is not usable, you should be able to measure it, saying that okay, if it is hallucinating, is it hallucinating by 0.5% or 95.5%, right? So you should be able to measure and only then make decisions on top of it.
So I'm just contrasting with human, right? If I'm somebody who is responsible of giving an answer and I'm supposed to explain how it works, then I'm held accountable. In this case, who's held accountable?
In this case, let me take a little bit totally controversial stand here, right? So there are no laws in the world that can sue AI, right? Have you? So have an
When
AI.
you fly, airlines are regulated, right? When you take a drug, it is regulated.
No, 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 no.
But today, unfortunately,
No, it's.
uh,
I don't agree with those examples. The reason is you
hmm,
can't sue a airplane if there is a crash. You sue a airline, right? So that's
hmm,
where I'm coming at. You can't sue a AI algorithm, right?
hmm,
But who is accountable is maybe people who are using it, people who are building it. It's people like you and me, right?
hmm.
So the accountability has to stop there, right? You everything can't be saying that okay, algorithm is wrong. As long as we have enough guardrails, enough things, and people are using these information to make their decisions, they're accountable because all this information was.
But don't you agree? Don't you agree that there is a bit of a difference between other industries, the innovation that we have seen? It is little easier to make people accountable. If it is a drug company, they're doing drug discovery, and if something happens, then you hold them accountable for it. If it is an airline company, has something happened, then you hold the airline accountable for it. Because AI today is being used, and a lot of it through open source, a lot of it through different people have been contributed to that, building that particular systems. How do you hold a single agency accountable?
So this is actually a very interesting question and has been dealt very beautifully in the EU's AI Act. Okay,
Yeah,
now
if you could explain that, it'll be great.
expert, but I'll make an attempt. So EUCI Act has taken a risk-based approach, wherein it actually says that there are few domains and few kind of use cases that are totally prohibited. You can't even go into that. Don't even venture into those things, right? So things like emotion detection and things to do with the human the altering with human decisions and things like that. So big no no. There are few which are high risk. Say, for example, when you're working with the physical safety of a human or the video analytics, sentiment analysis, and all that, you can do it, but you have a lot of obligations to do. So, if you end up doing a high risk systems, there are certain recommendations, and you need to, even if you're using open source or any other thing, there are certain obligations. There are some certifications that you need to do and ensure that you follow certain standards there. Then there is this foundation model, which is also almost closer to high risk use cases. And then low risk, typically it goes without saying. Across all this, they talk about the entire value chain of like what you said, like open source model. It comes, data comes from somewhere else, model comes from somewhere else, it gets deployed, it will be difficult to pinpoint. They have defined the entire value chain of accountability on who will be accountable at what data stage. If you're going to use an open source model, it is required for the open source model to disclose certain things, right? And when you are using it, you should have read it and understood the impact of it, right? So and you go through it. Similarly, for a IT product company, say for example like OpenAI or Microsoft, there are certain obligations. For a consumer, for our customers or end users, there are certain obligations. For an integrator or a deployer, there are certain obligations. So these obligations are made clearer, and if you go and in my opinion, the world will be moving towards very similar kind of a setup and structure when it comes to AI, because it becomes very clear and easy to have at each of the life cycle stage, supply chain, what each person should do, what each entity should do, and what is their accountability there. So it becomes easier for us to have that accountability conversation. So when we talk about data privacy and security, let's split this into two, because both are very, very important and vast topics altogether, right? Privacy and security. Privacy, more or less, is more talked about and more understood as of today, thanks to all the different privacy laws being passed across multiple different geographies. GDPR led the way again here, by Europe taking a lead, and even in India now we have DPDP Act and all this coming in. So we understand privacy a little better. Now, when it comes to AI and privacy, we have to be extra cautious, because there are multiple different ways in which the breaches can happen, right? So I'll give you a couple of examples, but first let me assure you, saying that there are enough tools and techniques available to identify any PIA information if it is getting leaked, to identify that and try to prevent that. Is that enough? No, because anytime a malicious actor coming in will be always able to breach these things, and we have to be careful. We have to be careful specifically when we are picking up, say, open source kind of models that are there, because the open source model may have open source and give you full license. Say they would have given you MIT license and all that, and the model may be really great, but knowing how that model was created and what data was used to train is also very important. That data might have been scraping a lot of, because it is open source, we assume it's okay for us to get data from internet. It may not be okay, right? Because if it is scraping through, say for example, your Facebook or LinkedIn or your social media profile, your Instagram profile and all that, then it is in breach of privacy laws. Just because it open source and this data is openly available doesn't mean it can be scraping through that. So we need to be very careful on what models you're selecting, how they were trained and developed, and understand the data very well before start using them. When it comes to using certain guardrails and techniques, we just need to extend. We don't have to do, we don't have to break the mountain here, specifically for AI. We need to start extending what we were doing for, say, GDPR and DPDP or other privacy. For AI also, we need to be able to do that. For AI, we have strong technical guardrails available, but process guardrails are also a must. So for example, when a use case is being formed, we talked about you need to have checkpoints at various stages of life cycle. When you're checking it for fairness and bias, you should also check for privacy. Is it violating my privacy when I'm using it, or is it violating someone else's privacy because of the training that I'm going to do, or because of the access that we have? So for all these different components, whether it is security, privacy, fairness, each of these check gates are very important from the process point of view. We need to bring that in. So that is on the privacy part. On the security part, it's actually quite interesting, and it's a very big topic. And um, I don't think there is enough focus on that. There have been people talking about using AI for cybersecurity, but not enough talk on securing AI. Security for using AI for security, everyone talks about it. Securing AI, hardly anyone talks. They are as vulnerable as possible, right? There are so many different ways in which AI models can be hacked into. There are so many ways in which even generative AI models are vulnerable, right? We need to be able to protect our AI investments. There are tools, techniques available, but not enough research has happened. Our biggest risk for enterprises going forward will be to ensure that How do they prevent any hacking attempts on the AI models? How do they prevent, say, if they're using generative AI, how do they prevent model extraction attacks to extract crucial information or secret information from the model? How do they prevent, say, prompt injection attack or backdoor entry or jailbreak attacks? There are multiple different see, same technology that is available to us for building good business applications and AI
Same
products
technology
and
available
transform.
for hackers too.
It's available to
Yeah,
hackers too, and bad
yeah,
actors, right? And much more
yes,
and more powerful.
yeah.
So, and they need to get it right only one time. When you're preventing and defending, every single attack has to be prevented and defeated. So there is not enough focus by enterprises on AI security. That is a big area of concern. So I would strongly recommend leaders who want to adopt AI in a structured manner to look into how to secure their AI investments. This is very, very important. There is enough help available. You can take that, but focus needs to be there.
Okay, we have covered quite a few ground. Finally, how do you see, before we get into AI governance and regulations, I think that is an important element to talk about as well. How do you see the future of AI ethics in next 5 to 10 years? What are the vision that you have?
See, the role of AI ethics is totally different, right? It is not technical in nature. It is not even business in nature. It is ethics in nature, right? So I may pick up a AI use case which might have followed all the required regulations. It might have followed all the required processes. It may have all the required technical guardrails, but still, maybe ethically, it is not right. So when we are developing these kind of use cases, it's very important to look at it from a totally a different view. That is why what I am recommending is every organization should look at having a ethics as a role, wherein we have people from a different background than technology, right? From psychology, from philosophy, from the legal and humanity kind of background, who can view the use cases from a totally different angle and give their buy-in. So this is another area that is very important, because I have seen multiple different examples where um, um, you know it was just a natural algorithm has followed all the responsible AI techniques and is in regulation of the law. But is it the right thing to do, wrong thing to do? Who will decide that, right? So some of these things can get avoided if you have a right uh, role for AI ethics.
Yeah, I think it is interesting that you say that, because when business is, writing the use cases, or a technology is writing the use cases, it is quite natural that they will write something which is favoring the business, favoring the technology, and hence all the elements that are essential to protect the biases are not addressed. And hence, having some external body part of the team, always good to have.
Correct. I'll
But
give you an example, right?
such a role probably doesn't exist in many companies today.
No, it
I
does.
hope
You'll be
it does.
surprised. People are thinking about it, and it does. But it exists in my company, but it is not mainstream. I agree. I'll give you an example why this is important. I'll take a public example that is out there in the public domain.
Yes.
Okay? Say, for example, when Uber is building the surcharges or the kind of it's all app driven, right? You when you order something from Uber, or when you actually ask for a cab, your business is only that app that is there, and for even the for both the customer as well as the provider, which means for the driver as well as for the customer, the business entity is only the app. Now the transparency in which they have followed to give the charges that are there, the surcharges that may come in, the peak charges and all that, right? It is transparent, it is following all the regulations, it is actually following the right process, it is not violating anything. But in an ethics way, do you need to give that explainability and transparency for drivers to know where they are going, who they are picking up? It's actually ethics a role. If a AI ethics officer is there, maybe they'll raise concern on certain things, saying that, okay, look, you're not being very transparent, you're not giving all the information for a human to make the decision, right? So things like that will creep in. So maybe a particular use case may be in adherence to the law, in adherence to our process, in adherence to our policies, but still not be ethical.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so on the ethics, is there anything else that we have missed, do you think?
No, I think we are good.
Okay, great. Let's talk about AI governance and regulations. This is very important. Some of it which you talked about in that context when we were discussing AI, but just articulate or explain from your perspective if there are companies out there who are thinking of implementing AI in their companies. I know it's a large subject, but how can companies prepare themselves when they think about evolving regulations around AI?
What we need to do is it depends on your area of operations, right? For us, it is very important to understand where we need to operate and where our customers are, and ensuring that we map the regulations and evolving regulations and the changing regulations in each of the geographies in which we are going to operate in, right? So you need to be able to map it continuously and see any changes in regulations or any new regulations that are coming in, how it will impact our work.
Do we have clear regulations today in draft form across different countries? Is
At
it
different stages of maturity, yes, we have. China
hmm.
is quite ahead. EU is quite ahead. EU has already rolled out, and it is a law
China
now.
is quite ahead?
Yes.
Okay. And
It
EU
is.
is quite ahead. EU, I think, to some extent, even in the GDPR, they're taking a lead,
They are
and
taking a lead.
so EU is ahead. Okay.
And in
How are we doing in India?
in India, not enough, I would say. We have, I think, Digital India Act is supposed to include a good amount of AI component, I hope. DPDP talks about privacy and covers AI. But we need to do much more. So um, now that the elections are over and the new government is formed, and
Yeah.
I hope the Niti Aayog and MITI and others will come together and take a strong view, because it is important that we have strong regulations and governance, at least guidance on the way ahead for Indian AI industry. See, there is difference, right? Some countries are taking a pro innovation approach where they're saying, "I am not going to regulate; existing laws are good enough." Right? So
Mm.
existing laws are good enough. AI should just get added on top of it, and you need to do
Mm.
what is there. So we'll give you guidelines for AI, but say the existing laws of if you can't kill someone, you can't kill someone, right? I mean, if AI system can't in manufacturing, if there are already certain laws, it has to just follow even for AI. So it is no exception. So strengthening the sectorial regulations and ensuring we just give guidance on AI is approach few of the countries are taking. Few of the countries in US, they had started taking this approach, but now after executive order from the president under NIST, we are forming a lot of working groups and looking at some kind of federal AI regulations in US. Singapore and UK are taking pro guidance kind of approach that is there. So we need to look at which geography we are operating in and how we need to be in compliance with those. But for enterprises, for CEOs, others, my strong take there is, you can't be in an era of manual compliance. That will make our AI use cases totally unviable. It won't be business friendly at all. We need to be able to codify compliance. We need, by default, our compliance need to be codified, and it should happen by default. Otherwise, the effort and cost that is spent on just being in compliance with a particular regulation or guidance will be so huge that we will not get any return on investments. So we need to try and be in compliance automatically as possible.
How is the collaboration working? And maybe people like you are part of different forums in India already, NASCOM and others. How the collaboration across technology companies, government, academia, how is it progressing with respect to strengthening, creating awareness on AI ethics, AI responsible AI practices? How are these moving forward, starting with India?
Good news is there is no absence of collaboration. There is a lot of collaborations, right? And
That's great.
it is same set of people we keep meeting in almost all the forums, and there are a lot of forums and roundtables and working groups that have been formed, some of them driven by industry, some of them driven by academia, some of them driven by the government, some of them driven by bilateral countries, right, like India, Australia, India, UK. So all this are there, and there is enough consultation, and there is enough collaboration that is going on. But is it enough to influence the stronger, tighter regulations and guidance towards AI? Maybe not enough. We're not doing enough is my personal feel. We need to do much more than that. There is a lot of discussion happening. There is a very few decisions coming out of it. So coming from industry background, I am itching towards actions and itching towards decisions. So that may be only my personal view.
Is it only in India or is it across the world?
It is not limited to India, but it is not fair to say that across the globe everyone is in the same boat. The few way ahead of
Like you mentioned, China and EU are a little ahead than the rest
even
of the world.
US, UK for now. I think looks like they're ahead of India at this point in time.
So I know it is important for every company who are venturing into the AI or doing some work on the AI, and what we talked about so far. It is important to to ensure some of those practices are followed. But if you are just a startup company, if you are a tech entrepreneur just getting into it, what kind of advice would you have for those companies to really be to really watch out for when they're implementing AI?
See, one key thing that they have to watch out for is just because it is available as a service, as a API, and it's OPEX, and there is no initial investment, doesn't mean, and they can do it, doesn't mean they have to overlook the guardrails that are there. It is
But that's the
very,
natural tendency, right?
it's a
Because it
natural
is easily
tendency.
available. It is open source. I can use it. I can use it anytime I want.
Because the
And
downsides are much higher and bigger. So think through it and just don't jump into it because you can, and availability is there. Think through it end to end, make a decision, make a call. At the end of the day, it's going to be a business call, but there are enough tools available to do it in a right way. Like I said, right, AI is here. You have to jump onto the AI bandwagon. There is no doubt about it, but the question always will remain, how do you embrace it, right? So always ensure that you embrace AI in a responsible and ethical manner that allows us to coexist together and bring in our social fabric closer. So that's something that you keep at core values. You will be fine, because down the road you will not get into issues with, say, regulations or guidelines, interoperability and things like that. So you need to ensure you keep that in mind when you are adopting AI.
like you said, I think the AI ethics is not a technology. There is no tool that you can procure or implement. It is combination of science and arts and philosophy and humanity and all put together. So, but as you know, many companies think that we need to move fast. Innovation is the way of life for many companies. So one side you have innovation, which is moving very very fast. On the other side, you have to have also some of those values and guardrails, and it's a tough balance to really maintain, to really get ahead.
It is a tough balance as long as we have a choice. Thankfully, so far we have a choice. Um, but once regulations kick in, we may not have a choice, right? So we need to be careful and do the right things right now when we have a choice.
Great. So, where do you see the future of AI? And we finally close. Where do you see the future of AI, future of things moving
I'm
forward?
quite bullish and optimistic, and anything and everything that we do in our day-to-day life today, we already see AI in everything, which means in
Yes.
future we'll have to work side by side with it, and it will be there. It will be omnipresent, right? So we'll have to just work with AI. I'm quite bullish about the technology, but at the same time, I'm also quite optimistic about adoption of the right, responsible AI and ethical AI techniques.
Amazing. So, is there anything else you think we haven't covered that
No, I
your
had fun.
work or your
This was an amazing, fun conversation. I had a good time talking to you. Lots of questions were very close to what I do, so I enjoyed every
Thanks,
single bit of
thanks for sharing. I think this is an important topic, and I hope many conversations keep happening on this particular topic because many people are not fully aware, and it is how we through these conversations we also discuss and take people's input as well. And I hope people do participate and share their feedback and their comments to this conversation that we just had. Sayed, thank you so much for
Thank you for
sharing
having
your
me. Thanks.
invaluable insight on AI and AI ethics. I know it's a vast subject, it is difficult to cover within a short time, but you did touch upon multiple areas. And I'm confident that our listeners who have been listening to this and they have gained valuable perspective as well, the future of AI and on the ethical implications. And to all our listeners, thank you so much for listening to us. And this episode, I'm sure, would have sparked some curiosity in your mind. So stay tuned for the summary of today's podcast, and which I will share with you shortly. Sayed, thank you so much
Thank you.
for joining. So, in conclusion, I will say this: AI holds immense potential to transform our world. But as we have discussed, with great power comes great responsibility. The challenges of bias, fairness, transparency, data security, and human oversight are critical considerations for building a responsible AI future. These challenges also highlight the need for robust AI regulations. As AI becomes more integrated into our lives, it's crucial to develop frameworks that ensure responsible development and use. The good news is organizations worldwide are working alongside policymakers to address these issues and ensure ethical AI development. Let's stay informed, be critical, and embrace the potential of AI while making a watchful eye on its responsible development and regulations. We would love to hear your thoughts, share your comments, or any questions that you might have on this particular podcast. Let's continue these important conversations about the future of AI together. Don't forget to like and share this episode if you found it thought provoking. And subscribe to the Spark and the Forge podcast for more insightful conversation like this one. You can find us wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, stay well, stay safe, and I will see you soon.